On Saturday night, March 8th, 2026, Iran fired Kheibar Shekan ballistic missiles directly at the Bazan oil refinery in Haifa Bay. That is the single largest oil processing facility in all of Israel. It supplies more than half of the country's fuel. The IRGC published the strike confirmation within minutes. Their message was simple: you hit our refinery, we hit yours. This was the 27th wave of Operation True Promise 4, a calculated timed retaliation that landed minutes after Israeli warplanes struck fuel depots in southern Tehran for the first time in this war. Iran watched its own oil infrastructure burn on live footage, and within minutes, Iran fired ballistic missiles at the facility that keeps Israeli jets fueled, their trucks moving, and their generators running. Over the next few minutes, I'm going to show you exactly how Iran hit Israel's largest oil refinery, why the Kheibar Shekan missile is special, and where the war is heading next. Before we continue, thanks a lot for tuning in. Your support is what keeps this show going, and I appreciate you watching. Pleasure. Make sure to subscribe and like the video so I can keep bringing you these critical updates. Here's what really happened. Israel hit oil targets inside Iran for the first time in this war. The IDF said it struck fuel sites that supply both civilian and military consumers. That framing matters. We will come back to it. Fires broke out at oil depots across Tehran and Alborz provinces. Footage from the Sharon depot on the outskirts of Tehran showed a wall of flame visible for kilometers. CNN geolocated a separate fire near a fuel storage site in the northeast of the city. By morning, residents were reporting black rain, actual black rain. Soot from the burning oil had mixed with moisture in the air and was falling as dark water across entire neighborhoods. The IRGC published its response on SEPA News within minutes. The exact wording of the statement read, in response to targeting Tehran refinery, we just targeted Haifa refinery. The weapon system identified was the Kheibar Shekan. The strike was designated as the 27th wave of Operation True Promise 4, and we need to talk about why that specific missile was chosen, because the engineering behind the Kheibar Shekan is the reason Iran can keep launching after 9 straight days of bombardment from 2 of the most advanced militaries on Earth. The Kheibar Shekan is a third-generation solid fuel medium-range ballistic missile operated by the IRGC Aerospace Force. It was first revealed in February 2022, on the 43rd anniversary of the Iranian Revolution. The name itself translates to Breaker of Kheibar, a deliberate reference to the 7th century battle in which Muslim forces conquered a fortified settlement near Medina. The ideological signal embedded in the naming is not accidental. The missile stretches 11.4 meters in length with a diameter of 0.76 meters. Launch weight sits between 4.5 and 6.3 tons. The warhead carries roughly 550 kilograms of high explosive. Officially, range is 1,450 kilometers, enough to reach deep into Israeli territory from launch positions in western Iran, though an upgraded variant designated Kheibar Shekan 2 reportedly extends that envelope to 1,800 kilometers. But range is not the real story. The real story is the fuel. Older Iranian systems like the Shahab series run on liquid propellant. Liquid fuel means hours of exposed preparation on a launch pad, a massive vulnerability window where satellites, surveillance drones, and signals intelligence can locate and destroy the launcher before it fires. The Kheibar Shekan eliminated that problem. Solid fuel means the missile can sit loaded, hidden on a 10-wheel commercial truck chassis disguised as a civilian cargo vehicle, and fire within minutes of receiving the order. Iranian state sources have stated that preparation time dropped by a factor of 6 compared to its predecessors. That single engineering change is the entire reason Iran has sustained 29 waves of missile operations in 9 days without running out of mobile launchers. You cannot destroy what you cannot find. You cannot find what looks like a freight truck parked in a warehouse. The warhead is a maneuverable re-entry vehicle built on a triconic airframe designed to maintain stability during aggressive terminal phase corrections. It carries satellite-aided guidance with the capability to adjust its path all the way to the moment of impact. Terminal velocity estimates vary. Some sources report Mach 2 to 3 on final approach. Others put the figure between Mach 7 and Mach 10. That discrepancy alone is significant because it suggests either deliberate ambiguity from Iranian sources to complicate Israeli defense planning or genuine uncertainty among Western intelligence analysts about the system's actual performance envelope. Either way, the missile is specifically engineered to defeat layered air defense architectures, and we will come back to whether those defenses held at Haifa, because neither government has given a straight answer. Now consider the target. The Bazan Group oil refinery in Haifa Bay is not just any industrial facility. It is the single largest oil processing complex in the entire country. It sits on 526 acres, roughly 2 kilometers from residential neighborhoods. It processes imported crude and supplies between 50 and 60% of Israel's total domestic fuel needs. Diesel for transportation, gasoline, kerosene used for jet fuel and cooking gas. Israel has only one other refinery, the Paz oil plant in Ashdod, operating at 110,000 barrels per day. If Bazan goes offline for an extended period, there is no domestic backup capable of filling that gap. Most people think Israel's energy security rests on its vaunted natural gas discoveries in the eastern Mediterranean. In reality, those offshore gas fields, Leviathan and Karish, were already shut down as a precaution when this war started on February 28th. Gas exports to Egypt were likely halted at the same time. So when the Kheibar Shekan missiles arrived at Haifa Bay, Israel's energy infrastructure was already operating in emergency mode before a single warhead detonated. And this was not the first time. In June 2025, during the 12-day war between Israel and Iran, the same Bazan complex took a direct hit. 3 employees were killed. The on-site power station that generates steam and electricity for refinery operations was severely damaged. All facilities were shut down. Bazan reported the damage to the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange. Trading in Bazan shares was suspended. The Energy Ministry estimated 2 weeks to restore basic operations. Pipeline systems, transmission lines, and downstream processing units all sustained damage in that strike. The refinery eventually came back online, but the vulnerability had been exposed for the entire world to see. So when the IRGC launched Kheibar Shekan missiles at the exact same complex 9 months later, they were striking a target with a proven track record of being penetrable. As of right now, Israeli military sources have not confirmed or denied the specific extent of damage from the March 8th attack. That pattern mirrors June 2025, when it took days for the full picture to emerge through stock exchange filings and energy ministry assessments. If the damage follows the same trajectory, expect a quiet Bazan disclosure to the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange within the next 48 to 72 hours. Stay with me, because the refinery strike is not an isolated event. It is one node in a rapidly expanding energy war that is reshaping the global economy in real time. This entire escalation began on February 28th, when the United States and Israel launched joint strikes on Iran under Operation Epic Fury. Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei was killed along with family members, senior military commanders, and civilians. Over 2,000 strikes were conducted across at least 26 of Iran's 31 provinces in the opening days alone. As of day 9, the Iranian Red Crescent reported at least 1,332 Iranians killed, including 194 children. In Lebanon, Israeli strikes have killed 123 people and displaced 95,000. 7 American service members are dead. A strike on a primary school killed at least 160 people were killed, the vast majority of them schoolgirls aged 7 to 12. UNESCO called it a grave violation of humanitarian law. Human Rights Watch called for a war crimes investigation. Iran's response has been relentless. By March 5th, the IRGC reported launching over 500 ballistic and naval missiles and nearly 2,000 drones since the war began. 40% directed at Israel, 60% aimed at American targets across the region. The IRGC openly declared that it considers the United States the primary enemy in this conflict and has prioritized American assets for punishment. Targets have included Tel Aviv, Jerusalem, Be'er Sheva, the USS Abraham Lincoln Carrier Group, a destroyer in the Indian Ocean, the 5th Fleet headquarters in Bahrain, Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, Al Dhafra in the UAE, and Sheikh Issa Air Base. Towards the end, I will show you why the tempo of these waves matters more than the individual strikes, because the math does not add up the way either side wants you to believe. The Strait of Hormuz is where this story becomes a global crisis. An IRGC commander stated publicly that the strait was closed and that any vessel attempting passage would be set ablaze. Tanker traffic collapsed from an average of 100 plus total vessels per day to just 4 on March 1st. 3 of those 4 were flying Iranian flags. By midweek, transit had dropped to near zero for any ship not flagged by Iran or China. More than 150 commercial vessels sat anchored outside the strait, unable or unwilling to cross. On March 5th, the IRGC refined its position. The closure applied only to ships linked to the United States, Israel, and Western allies. Chinese-owned vessels were transiting. One bulk carrier, the Iron Maiden, sailed through while broadcasting the words China owner on open channels. A Turkish tanker identified itself as Muslim-owned and Turkish-operated and passed without incident. 20 million barrels of oil move through that strait every day. That is roughly 1/5 of global supply. 84% of the crude flowing through the Hormuz corridor heads to Asian markets. China, India, Japan, and South Korea together account for 69% of all shipments. Only 4.2 million barrels per day can be rerouted through existing bypass pipelines, the Saudi East-West Line and the UAE's Fujairah pipeline. That leaves approximately 16 million barrels per day at risk if the closure holds. Brent crude surged from around $70 before the war to above $92 by Friday, March 7th, a 27% weekly gain. By Sunday evening, Brent had crossed $100 a barrel for the first time since 2022, climbing past $107. U.S. crude briefly touched $110. Goldman Sachs raised its second quarter oil forecast by $10 and warned that 5 sustained weeks of Hormuz disruption could push prices past $100 per barrel. American gasoline hit $3 and 41 cents per gallon, up 43 cents in a single week. Goldman estimated that traders were already pricing in a $14 per barrel risk premium just on the possibility of continued closure. And the damage is not limited to the Strait. Saudi Arabia intercepted 20 drones targeting Aramco's Sheba oil field. The Ras Tanura refinery, processing 550,000 barrels per day, sustained limited damage from interception debris. Bahrain's Sitra refinery was targeted. Fujairah port storage in the UAE was hit. Oman's Duqm port took fire. Kuwait halted crude production entirely, reduced refinery throughput, and declared force majeure on all oil exports. 2 people were killed in Saudi Arabia, the first Saudi fatalities of this war. Qatar, the world's largest liquefied natural gas exporter, shut down gas production on March 2nd and declared force majeure on LNG contracts 2 days later. Qatar's energy minister warned publicly that if fighting continues, every Gulf producer may be forced to stop exports. And his exact framing was that this will bring down economies of the world. European natural gas futures surged more than 50% in 48 hours, before partially pulling back. Most people think this is a regional conflict between Iran and Israel. In reality, it is an energy war with a blast radius that reaches every gas station, every shipping lane, and every central bank on Earth. Now here is where the political layer fractures. Donald Trump demanded unconditional surrender from Iran. He stated the war would continue for a little while and said he was not concerned about rising gas prices. The White House projected 4 to 6 weeks to achieve its military objectives. When pressed about the closed strait, Trump said it was the ship's choice to avoid it and claimed Washington had wiped out Iran's navy. On March 8th, Iran's Assembly of Experts elected Mojtaba Khamenei, the dead supreme leader's son, as his successor. The IRGC and Iran's senior leadership pledged allegiance immediately. Trump called him a lightweight and said he would not last long. But the regime did not collapse. The chain of command held. A new leader was installed within 8 days of the assassination, and the missile waves never stopped. And here is the contradiction nobody in Washington wants to address. The Washington Post revealed a pre-war assessment from the U.S. National Intelligence Council, concluding that a large-scale assault on Iran was unlikely to topple the government. The same report described the prospect of Iran's fractured opposition taking power as unlikely. Whether Trump read that assessment before ordering the strikes remains an open question. What is not an open question is the result. 9 days in, 29 waves of retaliation, a new supreme leader seated, the IRGC command structure intact. Iranian President Pezeshkian publicly stated that Iran will not capitulate. The wave tempo tells the real story. Analysts noted that Iran's ballistic missile launch rate declined between day 1 and day 4, pointing to either stockpile depletion or deliberate rationing for a prolonged campaign. But then waves 25 through 29 arrived in rapid succession, each deploying different systems: Kheibar Shekan, Fatah, Emad, Khorramshahr 4, and a previously unseen system designated Etimad. Either Iran possesses deeper reserves than any outside estimate predicted, or it is burning through its remaining inventory in a calculated final surge. Neither answer is reassuring. Share this to every person you know who still thinks this is under control. Saturday night, both sides struck each other's oil infrastructure in the same hour. The Haifa refinery, supplying more than half of Israel's fuel, was targeted with precision-guided ballistic missiles for the second time in 9 months. The Strait of Hormuz is functionally closed to Western shipping. Oil has jumped more than 40% since the war began and crossed $100 a barrel. Qatar has declared force majeure on global gas contracts. Kuwait has stopped exporting. 7 Americans are dead. Over 1,300 Iranians are dead. New supreme leader is seated in Tehran. And neither government, not Washington, not Tehran, not Jerusalem, has defined what an acceptable end to this conflict even looks like. That is not a war with an exit strategy. That is a war running on momentum. And momentum does not negotiate. Thanks a lot for watching. I really appreciate your support. Join the discussion in the comments below. Let me know your thoughts. Who do you think is winning the war? Do you think the war is getting out of hand? Let me know. Please subscribe and like the video if you want to stay updated, and click the video on the screen to see another. I'll see you soon.